In this tutorial video, I'm going to show you how to make enemies. Now, I've created me a little character here. You'll probably recognize this guy from Super Mario World. I mistakenly called him a Goomba, but I just realized he's not a Goomba after I imported him. At least I don't think he's a Goomba. I'm not sure what his name is. He looks like some sort of vampire radish or something. And so let's see what we've got here. Let's go to Edit Animations, and he's just 4 frames right now. We don't have a death animation for him. But still, he's just standing still, and then we've got the walk. 2 frames for the walk, you can see, and it loops. So let's go ahead and drop a couple of these. Let's just drop one onto the screen for now. And like you say, I see that I called him a Goomba, and I've already created a little bit of a behavior for him, but we'll get into more depth here. Now you're going to notice when I dropped him onto the screen, I didn't have him lined up with the floor. If we want him to start on the floor, we can hit this anchor button. And now it saved his position to the floor. So when we reload the level, you can see he's already on the floor. So anytime you hit the anchor, for example, if I want to do it with Mickey, I'm going to move him up here. I want him to start perfectly on the floor. Just hit the anchor. He'll drop down to the ground, and then it'll save his position. So refresh the level. He's already hit. So the anchor is a great way to do something like that. So I guess we're going to start off with, let's look at the alignment, the faction. So with Mickey, if we go to our general settings, you can see that this little white flag, it says that he's good. I'm good. He can also be evil, or he could be neutral. Typically when you do neutral sprites, what you want to use for those would be items or platforms, something that you can jump on. We'll show platforms a little bit later as well. So we're going to set him to good. He's visible. Standard set. I didn't cover this when we were creating a sprite. But you have these different animation sets, and each one has its own action, and then you can apply a button to each one as well. Always active, that means even if he's off the screen, he'll be active. If you don't have this on, then if they're off the screen, they won't activate until they get closer to the screen. What's great about that is if they're not active, it won't use as much CPU. So I like to turn this off unless it's a character that we absolutely need moving around at all times. So for our little guy right here, we've got him set to evil, so he is evil. Now the next thing we want to look at very quickly is collisions. Now, collisions against, it says collisions against evil. Well, we don't want him to collide with other evil sprites. We want him to collide against good sprites. So, sprite interacts. This means if this guy if he touches a good sprite, he'll interact with it. Pass through me, that means that they'll walk through each other, but we don't want that to happen. We want them to stop once they hit each other. And then we'll do some other things here in a minute. Damage target for X amount of health, meaning when he touches him, he'll damage him. So on the other side, let's look at Mario. Mario. I got Mario on the mind since I thought that since this guy's from Super Mario World. Let's look at Mickey. And with Mickey, we want him to interact with evil. We're not going to have him interact with good sprites. We want him to interact with evil sprites. Now, technically speaking, we could have everybody interact with everyone else, but you need to be careful when you're designing your game, because you want these guys to interact with the absolute minimum amount of sprites. Typically, I don't like to have evil sprites interact with other evil sprites, especially if I'm doing like a shooter and there's a lot of them on screen, because when they interact with each other, every single frame in 60 frames per second, it has to check the bounding box to see if they're colliding with each other. So when you do this, it typically runs slower. This was built in Adobe Director. And the problem with Director right now is that it does not utilize multi-core CPUs, and that means that it's not running as fast as it could. Now, Director 12 is supposed to come out later this year, so hopefully that'll fix all of this. Hopefully it'll be a lot faster. So right now, this is going to be this is pretty it's about as optimized as it could possibly be. It'll be faster once we can start utilizing some, things like 64-bit operating system, multi-core CPU, because this software has not been updated in, I think, almost a decade now. It's just ridiculous. But it is being updated. They are working on it, which is when we'll be able to put these games on mobile devices and all that stuff. But for now, just any tricks I can give you to speed everything up. And so that's why I recommend doing it that way and not having everyone interact with everyone else, because every frame it's got to check if they're connecting with each other. So that's why I say these evil guys, don't have them interact with each other. So let's look at some of this. So once again, this is Mickey Mouse, and this is when he collides against evil. Now something else, a collision is initiated when a sprite moves and touches another. A sprite that's sitting still will not initiate. So what that means is, if this guy doesn't interact with good, if Mickey walks into him, nothing will happen. So you really need one to all. You need sort of the callback. So when he interacts with good, you need the good to interact with evil. So there's always that back and forth. It's common sense. If you don't understand what I'm saying, just use common sense. You always want to have them both interact with each other. So, looking at some things we've got here, pass through me, that means that even though an interaction could possibly happen, they could damage each other, they won't stop when they touch each other. They'll just keep passing through. Pass through my bottom. Now, this is something that you'll primarily use for platforms. Since a platform, if you have a platform that's moving up and down, you want to walk underneath that platform and jump up through the bottom, and we'll show that a little bit later in another video. You want to set that up so you can jump through the bottom, but you won't fall through the top. Now we have different sets of collisions for up and down and left and right. You may want different types of results for each one. So damage target, this means, remember, this is Mickey. So when I collide against evil, I can damage the target for X number of health points. Springboard effect, meaning when I hit him, I'll bounce up in the air. And that'll be based on if we're holding down the jump key. Kill me, meaning I die as soon as I touch him. Bounce me, I'll bounce off, just a little bit of a little pressure. Kind of like the springboard effect, except I can go in different directions. Infinite bounce means I'll bounce up and down forever as long as I'm hitting this object. Bounce target, that means I'll bounce the evil sprite. So if I collide with him, it'll bounce him off of me. And then we can set a sound effect when the collision hits. It'll set a sound effect, or we can set a script when we get into really complex stuff. Very quickly, world, very similar. Pretty much the exact same thing, except obviously you can't damage the target for X amount of health. Typically with world, really what you're setting is whether or not you can collide with the world. You may want projectiles, apples, you may want them to fly through these walls instead of hitting them and disappear. So, now these guys will interact with each other. So let's just test this real quick. So basically I will not be able to pass through him. You can see that I'm unable to pass through him. Now we haven't damaged each other, and we don't have any AI set for him, so he's just sitting there. But as you can see, we don't move through him. So now what I want to do, let me go ahead and pause this, is we're going to go to patterns. Now pattern is where you set up the AI. Now I wanted to keep this very simple. So what you've got is you've got 5 patterns. And each pattern, there's a script over here that you can record. So let's do this very quickly. I'm just going to record a pretty quick pattern to show you how this works. And we're just going to call this, well, let's just leave it as pattern 1. So I had to pause and unpause, so I don't even exactly remember where I was at. So I may repeat something here in a second. Sorry about that. So let's take a look at some of this right here. Now, acts as projectile from animation. We did this in another video where I showed how to, when you throw an apple, it'll take the parent sprite, meaning the sprite that spawned this sprite. Obviously with this monster right here, it doesn't matter, but if he had been spawned by another sprite, you could click this and he would go in the direction that that sprite was facing. Apply infinite direction or button presses. If we do this quite simply, he's going to walk to the left, and these have to have a pattern associated with them. So we hit play, and you can see he's now walking to the left. So if we say move opposite direction if collision, that means when he hits something, for example when he hits Mickey right here, he's gonna bounce off of him. Now he's getting stuck going back and forth. Pause for a second, change something else. Let's turn that off. Follow enemy, and I'll show you how this works. So see, he's following Mickey. I get this way, he's gonna keep trying to get me. So that's how that works. And there's a couple of others. Track enemy starting position. Now this is typically for something like, now I should say one point. Follow enemy. It's going to follow based on the controls that he has available to him. If you have a bullet in a game where you're not using ladders, meaning you can walk up and down, it'll follow it infinitely. So really what you want to do with bullets is you want to say track enemy starting position or anticipate. Track enemy starting position means when this pattern loads, when this pattern runs, it's going to try to go to the position the enemy is currently at. Now if there's multiple enemies, it's just going to pick the closest one. Anticipate means it's going to look and see where the enemy is moving to and do a calculation to figure out if he keeps going at that rate, where should I send this? So it'll go in a straight line. It won't follow the enemy, which could mean it could curve and things like that, but it'll go in a straight line but anticipate where you're going. So it's sort of like if you're playing a shooter, like a first-person shooter, when you lead your shot, if you're trying to snipe someone, if the bullets travel, it's exactly like that. We can also set our actions. So we can have actions. Turn these buttons on, so it'll press the action button. Now, how often does it press it? Well, that's based on our buttons. Delay X amount of frames until next press. So that's how it'll do that. You should turn rapid fire on as well, although it may not matter. I'm not exactly sure. So let's turn this off. And now what we're going to do is we need to refresh this. We need to get him back to his starting position. So we're going to go ahead and refresh that. And now I'm going to show recording. Well, actually, before we show recording a pattern, we have a list of each of the patterns. There's one of these for each one. We can say which pattern plays first, and then we can say if that pattern only plays once. So we only have one pattern, but we can do multiple patterns. And what it'll do is when he loads, it'll just pick a random pattern. So that way, a player may not know specifically what's about to happen. Reality is, writing AI is unbelievably difficult to go around corners and things like that. So patterns are really the easiest way to do it. So you can have up to 5 patterns. You can choose which one plays first. If you click only play once, like we choose the first one and say we only want it to play once, then after that pattern plays, it's going to delete that pattern from the list. So it will not play that pattern again. So if we have 2 more patterns, it'll switch between those back and forth. It always picks a random one. It can pick the same one twice in a row, but you can tell it to delete it from the list after that. I don't know if I covered this already because I'm going so fast, but scripts, we have a script. Well, you know what? Let's go ahead and record a pattern. Just very quickly. When I hit the record button, it's going to start recording to the pattern that I have selected, and then I'm going to take control over this character using my keyboard as I would any character. It's going to focus the camera on him. So here we go. I'm walking back and forth. I'm going to do a couple of jumps. Now I'm going to get him back to his original position and hit stop. And I'm going to say always return to original position. Now when you hit the stop button, well, actually, let's go ahead and play this so you can watch the pattern in action. You can see it's doing exactly what I wanted it to. It gets back to the original position. Now, the one thing that this really tries hard to do is it'll always try to move your sprite back to the original position so that it won't jump. When we say always return to original position, it'll spawn him right back to where he started. But as long as you can walk him back to where that green ghost was, as long as you can get him back there and hit stop, even if you run past it, hit stop, what it'll do is it'll look the last time you were close to that spot, and it'll mark that spot. So it does sort of like an animation blend right there. So as long as you get close to that spot, and you can see he's not teleporting when he gets back, because I moved past the spot, but he's not teleporting back to that position. So let's go ahead and pause this and take a look at this. So here's the script that it's created. And you can write these yourself if you want more precision. Wait 28, I hit record, and then I waited 28 frames, and then I pressed right. Wait 44, I was holding down the right key for 44 more frames, and then the right was turned off. I waited 2, then I hit left, I waited 33. So you can script these yourself. There's jump, I waited 11, and then I turned the jump off. And what we can do here is we can set up a script. We click on this. We don't have any scripts yet, but we could place a script at the start of this, and we could place a script at the end. So if you wanted to have like a really cool boss intro before the boss started doing something, you could run a script on the first pattern, and it would start playing that. And you could like run a cut scene so it has a voice bubble where he's taunting your character or something. And you don't have to run a pattern in here. You could just have it go, and then you could do a wait. For example, you could say wait, 200 if that's how long your script's going to take to run, and then you can put another script at the end. And that's one of the reasons why you'll want to delete. You want to say delete this pattern after it plays once, because if you do have a boss with an intro, well, you don't want that intro to keep happening randomly in the middle of a battle. So you tell it to play the first one, you tell it to play only once, and then that's how it'll work. So we can create more patterns, and we could swap back and forth between these. So I'm going to create a pattern here where he just jumps. So now it's going to swap back and forth between these 2 patterns. So it's doing the jumping one first, pattern 2. It's going to do it again. It's completely random. And now it's doing the first one. So it's just going to keep going back and forth between these 2 patterns. And this way it becomes less predictable for someone to know what your enemy is going to do. And I think that just about covers everything. Like I said, if he had some sort of attack, we could run attacks in there as well. It would be button 1, and button one off, and that's how that goes. And I'll probably cover that in some later videos as well. But that's a very easy way. You don't have to do. You notice I didn't have to do any programming to create an enemy. The one thing I didn't talk about was damaging, but we can set up all of our damaging through the collisions widget. We can say, we want him to damage our target for, we click on this and we can say damage him for 1 health or whatever, and so we can do it that way, and that's how we'll run all that. So that's creating patterns for your enemies. Now, if you set a pattern for something you're controlling, it'll actually override it. So you may want to. You could actually do some things like that as well. I don't know how you could use that, but there's a lot of different things that you could do to do that. If you wanted to say force your character, set a pattern to where it's forcing him up, you may have to fight against that, sort of like a forced gravity or a lack of gravity or something like that. So video's getting pretty long, so that is patterns. That's how you do quote-unquote artificial intelligence. It's not really intelligence at all. It's more of a trick than anything else, but that's how you do your patterns for your enemies, and you can also do it for good sprites as well.